welcome to Style and Glamour with Yolanda's. Today you're going to be empowered through fashion, because Amanda Koker is here with us, a graduate of Mount Ida College, who really believes her styles are fantastic. They're classic, they're beautiful, and they empower women. So if you want to be empowered, let's meet Amanda Koker. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I hear you just got back from Project One Runway.
Yes, I did. I interviewed in New York. It was quite the experience. I got to meet people on TV and really present myself as a designer for the first time to people of the industry, which for me was really validating and just really exciting.
Well, I'm going to go back a few years. When you were very young, you were living in Stoughton, which you still live in Stoughton, I believe?
Yeah, no, I'm still from Stoughton, yeah.
And for you to get into fashion, I understand that your love of fashion started with, for people that really remember it, the life-size Barbie doll.
Oh, yeah, it was like a 3-foot Barbie doll, and I just decided her clothes were terrible and I just needed to do something else, and didn't really think it through, but I undressed her and I used paper as like a mache and put it on her, not really thinking through it was never going to come off, but I was pretty excited. That was my first real endeavor. My mom said from then, that was it. That was what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
And you made it out of paper?
I made it out of paper. I think she tossed the doll, but it's out of paper.
Oh, that's fantastic. But that really inspired your family to notice what you were doing and realizing that this could be a career for you. And how old were you then?
I think I was 8 or 9. I really wasn't that old yet.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And it was about my size at the time. It was probably, yay high, and that's how tall
I
I was.
remember them. I remember them well. I wish I still had one. I think they'd be a collector's item today.
Oh, today? Yeah, definitely.
Today, definitely. And then later on, Girl Scouts, you started sewing on your own patches instead of asking your mother to do it.
Yeah, no, my mom doesn't really do the sewing thing. And for me, my first thought of sewing was always, it was just over and under. So it seemed like a simple concept, and friends of mine were doing it. I met my 2 best friends through Girl Scouts. So we all had our patches in the sewing patch, and they were showing me how to do it, and it just seemed easy. And from then I did, we had some plays in high school, so I helped out, all still hand sewing, till I got my sewing machine at 13. I was so excited. A brother from Walmart.
Wow.
Whole $99, and that I was like so intrigued because I could just sew. Like besides hand sewing, I could really make something.
And how old were you then?
I was 13 then. And so just about middle school age when, you're not quite sure of who you are. And so through sewing, I found I wanted to make things for myself. There wasn't really a lot on the market at the time, especially for plus size. I was a big kid, even young. And I could make my own things, and for me it was inspiring because I could buy this fabric and I could find it, and then I could cut it up. I wasn't really sure what I was doing at the time. I was really winging it until college, but I just started sewing, and using the machine was a great help. So thanks to my grandmother and my mom and even my family, who really inspired me to just they saw this at a young age, and they really try to encourage me to just keep following it.
But your description of fashion is like a puzzle, and that intrigues me because looking at your designs, they're very geometric, they're very personal and individual, very classically beautiful, but you call it a puzzle.
For me, it is a puzzle, in many ways more than one. My dad's an engineer, so I think I get that very logical mind from him. And my mom's very creative in a different type of way. So I think between the two of who my parents are, it's how I came to be.
Exactly.
But for me, the puzzle concept comes really in pattern making. I really found a niche in geometry and how the shapes work. And even my first year of college, it really inspired me. I like things that are asymmetrical and pattern pieces, and that is where the puzzle comes in, is how to put those pieces together to form around the body that now, is 3D. So how to do that and make it beautiful and elegant and get the fit right. It is a puzzle in a sense. And as you keep going and you make a garment and a collection, it becomes even more of a puzzle with color matching and pattern making and printing and figuring out what colors go where. For me, it's a giant puzzle that I like to put together.
It's interesting. When I saw some of the fabrics and some of the prints you've done, which are amazing, but one of the prints, which I was amazed, is this skeleton that you have to actually know about anatomy in order to do this. This is not an easy thing. Now, you're printing on fabric, and you got that because you're basically inspired by?
I was inspired by a rock band called Avenged Sevenfold. I'm really into the hard rock, and their logo is a skull with wings. And so on my senior thesis, my senior collection, I started to research and do more, and it became not just about the skeletal structure, but more about the body and how we work and how complex we are. So I had to research the blood and the muscles and just the structure. It was an anatomy lesson of sorts in my research, and through figuring these out and doing my research, I found things to print. And one of my centerpieces is my blood vessel dress, that I like to call it. It's a red blood flowing dress. It was actually a mistake, and I was dyeing it by hand. It's 100% silk, so it takes the dye really well. And it just looks bloody. I don't know how else to describe it, but it flows, and the dye took really well. And that kind of forced me to keep developing. As a collection, it develops on its own. You can have a plan and do the puzzle, but then you got to let the puzzle develop, and that's part of the whole design process of making a collection.
It's too bad Lady Gaga didn't know you, because she ended up with a meat dress. Which
Oh, God.
She'd be better off if you could have taken the meat and transformed it into a fabric.
Yeah, I think that, oh, yeah, you could print that. I could print her a picture.
It. She could have still had a meat dress, right?
Yeah, I learned a lot of those techniques in college in a surface design class. You learn how to manipulate the fabric, because making this collection, I found I wasn't going to find fabric I was looking for. I was going to have to create it or manipulate it in such a way that it would work for me and speak to what I wanted it to tell you.
Now, did you ever think that maybe dressing a rock band would be fun too?
That would be a dream of mine. Maybe Amy Lee from Evanescence. That would be absolutely incredible. I couldn't even.
Yeah, I think if they saw your portfolio and they see what you do, I mean, to get into this now, and you've interpreted that in a lot of the fabrics you've done. Now, does one fabric dye better than another?
Natural fibers like silk and cotton really take the dye because they're natural, but like a synthetic blend or anything, not quite so well. You can print it and it's all right, but dyeing it won't take as well. The result is really hard. So I always tell underclassmen when I tutor that if they're going to do some kind of fabric manipulation, they really need to go with a more natural fiber. And it also looks more expensive most of the time. Synthetic tends to look a little cheap.
You know, it's interesting because when I was in the bridal business, a lot of girls that bought dresses from me would come back after and say, you know, I loved my dress, but I want to wear it again. I don't want to wear white. Think I could dye it? And they've had some bad scenes with it because the fabrication, depending, I mean, it can be all blotted and all blotchy and it won't come out.
Oh, yeah,
even.
and some, I did a reverse bleach dye, which you pulled out colors out of a synthetic, which was it worked better with synthetic there, but the fabric was orange, so it pulled out a darker orange. Where with white, if you have any kind of polyester blend, I really wouldn't take to dyeing it. No, I think I would either print it or pleat it or manipulate it in such a way to change it, or even you could paint it. There's all kinds of fabric things you could do. You can, yeah. So you can also use different manipulation techniques on the same garment. It doesn't have to be just one. You could do several.
There is a company that I dealt with called Yolanda, and they're in California, and all her dresses, none of them are the same because they're all hand-painted. So if you ordered a dress, like the print dress you have on, the next one won't be the same because they're totally hand-painted. So none of the dresses will be exact. So if a customer orders one, you have to warn her and tell her, well, the rose is going to be exactly where it is on this dress because when it's hand-done, it's done differently.
Yeah, and that's how I do them in my collection. Each garment I make is tailored to that model. Okay. So it'll fit just her. And I made a skeleton dress, and I printed it by myself, one skull at a time, so I was making the pattern. So if I did, say, a plus size, for instance, there would be more skulls in the dress, so the pattern would be slightly different than the size 6 I created.
Fantastic. Now, you're tutoring. This is amazing for young students, so you're actually teaching other students.
Yeah, and in the beginning, I was really honored to take this on because that means I knew what I was talking about.
Exactly.
And for my own personal enlightenment, it helped reinforce what I already knew, so I can put a zipper in a pair of pants probably in my sleep at this point. But I wanted to help others because for me, some things came easier than others, and not everybody gets the pattern making or gets the design. So if I could help somebody help them out with the little problem they were having, they might have a niche somewhere else that they would just flourish in. And it helped myself and others, so it was a win-win, really, for me.
I know dealing with certain fabrics, like stretch fabrics, you need stretch thread. Or you're dealing with leather, you need certain needles on the machine, right?
Yeah, and some things, you learn a lot of that in college, and not everybody really understands, like the needle changes and the thread changes, or even I try to want underclassmen to really use structured fabric like cotton, woven, denim, things that are easy to sew in the beginning because not everyone started sewing like myself at 13. they don't have as much practice. So they jump for the silk because it's pretty, but it's really hard. It takes a little bit of practice to sew. So I try to get them to work on their construction skills through easier fabrics, because once they have that under control, they can venture into the silks and the things that are, that slip and are harder to use.
Now, the interesting thing, and I loved when I went through your book, there's a picture of you in your prom dress, and you made your prom dress.
I did.
Which I think that's great. I mean, you're certainly not going to bump into yourself. You're going to be one of a kind, that's for sure.
Yeah, I actually used some of that fabric again in my first garment I made in college.
And what fabrics did you use?
I used a aubergine satin, and then a metal, for lack of a better word, it's like a metal woven mesh with a design on it. I'm not quite sure what it was called, but it was really pretty. And through like color theory, I found the different colors I put under it slightly changed the look.
So you put color underneath to change the variation.
Yeah. So the top, my favorite color is purple, so that's why I chose that dress to be purple, and I really liked it. But, now I look back and I'm like, oh, it's a hot mess. But only in comparison to what I could do now. But for someone self-taught at 17, that was really the thing then. So for me, I cut the shapes because I didn't understand draping. I really understood flat patterns. So I cut the shape instead of let the fabric speak for itself. And I feel you learn that in design. That's what college has really taught me. You're either a draper or a flat patterner. For me, because my mind works logically, I like flat pattern. The geometry and the puzzle makes sense to me, where the draping doesn't, because it's kind of like it's the art of the touch, and you just have to touch it quite right to make it work.
Is velvet hard to work on? Because I've had a lot of friends that want to make something out of velvet, and then they realize, oh my God, did I really want to do this?
You got to pay attention to a lot of different things. You need to pay attention to your thread and your needle. You got to pay attention to the way the fabric is, the direction in which the fabric lays. You don't want to sew one side with the velvet facing up and the other facing down, because the sheen's going to be different.
Okay, that's when you see a dress like that it's kind of shaded, and you say, what's the matter with this dress?
Yeah, if it's cut off grain, if it's slightly off, the color will look slightly different, and the fabric won't be as strong, because the grain of the fabric is the strongest, the part of the fiber. So that's why they ask you to cut your fabric a certain way.
Does it also get all over you? Because my girls used to wear smocks because they said, I'm cutting velvet today. I got to be careful because it's going to go all over me.
It does. A lot of fabric does. A friend of mine's working with fur right now, and when I worked at Fabric Place, one of my first jobs at 15, I'd come home covered in glitter and all kinds of...
That is not so bad.
No, but in a bangaline fabric, when you tear it, even though it's polyester, the sheen of it gets all over you, so you come home covered in all these little fibers, and sometimes I swear I can never get it out. It needs a lot of lint rolling.
Well, one of the things, not only your prom dress that I was so impressed with, and I'm sure you were proud to wear it.
I was very proud.
I
Hem was a little short, but I was very proud.
I think it's good. Well, the short is in, so you got to do that.
Yeah.
But I know that many of the prom girls used to panic when they shopped with us, because we used to write down what prom it was and what date, because they never wanted to bump into themselves. And they'd always say, well, did you sell this to the Belmont High? And we'd say, no. Well, then we'd sell it to them. And we'd ask them, and we'd do a log. So if a girl came in and wanted a dress that someone else bought and was going to that prom, we wouldn't sell it to her. And they would get very angry.
Very nice.
But we did. We felt that was important.
Oh,
even if it was a $200 dress, whatever
price.
It was the fact that these girls wanted something unique, and I think that's why our prom dress business was so good. But yours is perfect. You make yours, and nobody can duplicate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to lie. At that time, my time management wasn't so great, so I was sewing till like the night before. But yeah, nobody had it, and for my skill at the time, it was pretty impressive. I mean, I thought I put a whole dress together. The hem was a little wonky, but nobody knew that. Only I did.
No, yeah, well, you're a perfectionist, obviously. I can see that. Yeah, you're dressing women to empower them, so you are pretty.
Yes, definitely. I feel it's necessary. That's how I always want to feel. And being a struggling kid who didn't have a lot to choose, a lot to wear as a plus size kid, I really felt, clothing yourself and being dressed is self-expression, and feeling empowered and strong I feel everyone wants to feel that way.
Exactly.
I definitely do. And I feel everybody does. So I feel I really want to, in my designs and even things for myself or for others, that's what I want to get across. I want you to feel good about yourself and what you're wearing.
Well, it gives you the confidence. If you know if you look good, you feel good. I mean, you're going to make that